He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
You ever watch somebody do something and they're not exactly sure why they do it? I mean, you're really not even exactly sure why they do it. You just see they keep doing it, and really the answer is just because. I mean, there's not really anything driving me to do it. I don't have to do it. Nothing's making me do it. There's really no grand design in my outcome. I'm just doing it because I want to. I want to ask today, do you lead for a cause or do you lead just because?
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. One of the conversations that comes up on a regular basis with my coaching clients, especially those that are building their speaking career or they're building their speaking around their career, 2 totally different things. One of the conversations that comes up on a regular basis is this constant tension between, do I talk about myself or do I not? And you'll hear some people say, well, if you're delivering a speech or you're delivering a presentation and you use the word I more than once or twice in the totality of your talk, then you're really self-focused and not others-focused. I can't disagree with the basic sentiment of that, but let me propose another way of looking at the same thing. I have coaching clients who have hired me to help them with their public speaking. And the primary reason they hired me was not based on the glitzy marketing. It wasn't the beautiful postcards. It wasn't the ads on the web. It wasn't the social media things that I put out. It was based on a conversation that they had with me. With me, because of my skill set, because of my training, because of my research, because I don't stop digging into that stuff. Now, this isn't about me, other than to say, if you hire a public speaking coach, the speaking coach should have some knowledge of speaking, some ability to articulate an idea, beyond just the ability to string together a bunch of words or regurgitate many of the other things that they've read and studied. Let me use the other camera. Many of the other things that they've read and studied. See, there's something about public speaking which should be equal parts entertainment and education. But at the same time, it should be synthesized education, meaning I didn't just read the book and regurgitate it back to you. If you've been in that place where the person on the platform, the person at the front of the room, is quoting stuff that you could go, hang on, that came out of this book. If you could literally go back to the quote and tell them what book it came from because you've already read the same content, they're not adding value to you. They might be impressing you with their ability to memorize and requote. But what a leader, what a teacher really ought to be able to do is draw something out of you that has been lying dormant in you. And it's not their ability to quote or memorize someone else's content that makes that true. It's something in the nature of them. If something in the nature of them inspires you to do something different, then that leader, that teacher, that presenter has called something out of you that will make you a better person. They've added value to you. They've found a greater purpose in you. They've inspired you to move on to the next thing. It's their skill set, it's their gift set on display that inspires you. When my speaking clients hire me, they're not hiring a book or a curriculum or a bunch of ideas that have been thrown together from regurgitation of other people's stuff. Oh yeah, I diligently research other communicators. I research their styles. I research their presentation techniques. I pay other coaches in the world of speaking who have succeeded at things that I have not yet succeeded at, who are further down the road than me. I pay them to make me better. I synthesize that information into my own philosophies, my own ideas, my own thoughts, and that's what I deliver to my clients. Now, surely every one of my coaching clients could have gone out and bought the books that I bought and read the books that I've read. And they may or may not have come to the same conclusion. But having read and studied what I have, there is a contrast between memorizing, regurgitating, and synthesizing. And when you hire me as a coach, that's what you're hiring. What I've synthesized, what I've learned, memorized, quoted, put into practice, beat it up, put it through the sausage grinder, and come out the other side with something entirely different, or at least an application of it that is easy for you to apply. Now, some of those are going to be philosophical ideas. Some of those are going to be practical, strategic, and tactical ideas that you can put in play right now. And some of those ideas are going to challenge you to your core, because I challenge myself to a core on a regular basis to ask, why do I do what I do? Now, my original question was this: do you lead just because, or do you lead for a cause? Is that semantics? Leave your answer in the chat. Is it semantics to say, well, I lead because or I lead for a cause? They both have the word cause, so that's basically the same thing, right? No, they're not. If you're driven by a cause, you'll probably have to talk about yourself. You probably will have to talk about yourself when you teach, lead, present, speak, because for the purpose of, the cause that you speak on behalf of is bigger than yourself, but your motivation to be involved in it has to do with you. It's about who you are, what you've lived through. Now, I know there are other causes out there. There are people like Tim Tebow, for an example, which perhaps I'm mistaken. Maybe it's a first touch kind of a relationship, but I don't think Tim Tebow has ever been sex trafficked. I'm just guessing. He'd be a hard victim. He's a big athletic guy with a lot of money, a lot of security, and was a pretty good athlete as a violent football player. Okay? So just having said that, he's a little hard to kidnap, a little hard to sex traffic. But he has taken up the cause of sex trafficking. And the first question that you're going to have to ask when you ask, should I get involved in this, is, what made you get involved? Why are you involved in this? Okay, so suddenly we have a conflict to that question. Why should I talk about myself if I'm speaking? Isn't it all about the audience? Well, yes, it's about the audience, and you've got to have them in the view of your mind. But if you're not an expert on the topic, if you're not an expert with qualifications that they can just read off the page, MD, okay, so you're a medical doctor. Maybe you do know a little bit about it. Okay, so you're a rocket scientist. Maybe you do know a little bit about it. Well, that's great, but you don't want a rocket scientist cutting your hair. You don't want an MD necessarily cooking your dinner. And when you can distinguish the two and say, okay, so what is an expert in this matter on which I'm considering making a move, making a hire, making an investment? Well, the expert ought to be able to defend their ideas, their synthesis of the information they've gathered, their expertise as it their expertise as it's conveyed to you and delivered to you, so that you could say, okay, I get it, you know what you're talking about, now help me apply it in my life. Again, it doesn't matter if that's from the platform, from the front of the classroom, on a webinar, on an online course. If the person delivering the content to you is not an expert on the content, then they at a minimum should be able to point to you where they got their information and why they're interested. Tim Tebow is not a sex traffic victim. Tim Tebow, I'm guessing, has never been involved in sex trafficking. But it is a cause that he's passionate about. He's put a lot of money behind it. He's put a lot of heart behind it, a lot of time and a lot of brand ID, a lot of his own name ID into fighting this cause. It's a great cause to be fighting. But is he leading for that cause, or is he just leading because? So what would the contrast be? Well, how about those people who lead because they got the promotion, because there's more money in it? We know people who have led organizations, global organizations, and they really, they couldn't care less about the cause or even the organization. They took the job because that was the next position. Executive director was the next position from where they've been, if you look at their resume. How do you know this is true? Well, just go to LinkedIn and look up nonprofit organizations, find any executive director, and then start digging into their history. And when you see they've led this nonprofit and that nonprofit and this nonprofit and that nonprofit, and they have no correlation to each other, there is no cause that links the multiple organizations together, you have a leader who leads because that's the job title. It's because that's what I do. It's because that's what I get paid for. They're not necessarily motivated by a problem or a challenge or a cause. They're motivated because there's an opportunity to make money at it and they have the skill set to do it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm asking you as a leader, can you distinguish the difference? And as you distinguish the difference, it should reveal itself when you speak, when you teach, and when you lead. If you lead for a cause, then talking about yourself is the matter of saying, here's how I fit in this picture. Here's why this is important to me. This is what I went through. This is what I've learned. So when I speak on the topic of overcoming porn addiction, that's a cause that's near and dear to my heart because I spent 25 years as an addict and it nearly destroyed my marriage. Thankfully, we've been married 28 years now. We've survived through all of the nonsense that goes along with that addiction. And when I see young families struggling with that, that's a cause that is near and dear to my heart. And I surrender everything that I have, every talent, every skill set, every gift set that I have to assist in that area. Sometimes I get paid for that, and sometimes I don't. But in that arena, I lead for the cause. I am qualified to talk about that arena. I am an expert, sadly enough, in that arena. Not as a psychologist, not as a psychiatrist, not as a clinical therapist, not as a recovery addiction expert. I am the person who spent 10,000 hours figuring out how to get free. Malcolm Gladwell said in his book, if you've done 10,000 hours at anything, you are an expert in it. That means you've probably spent more time on that one topic than anybody else. Trust me, I got more than 10,000 hours on both sides of that, both as an addict and since I got free. I am an expert in overcoming that addiction. Not because somebody licensed me or certified me, but because I've been there and I've done the work. That's a whole different thing. When I speak on that cause, I talk from my experience because it's my experience and it's my life and it's my success, and it is a success that you can model. If you are interested in that cause, I am glad to talk to you about it. I also, though, have spent 10,000 hours studying communicators, studying what it means to be a communicator in the world of leadership, understanding the psychology of how that applies and how to put those tips and tricks into place, how to be a better communicator, how to up your game, so to speak. I've studied those through the lens of politics, through the lens of sociology, through the lens of culture, through the lens of race. I've studied those topics so that I can be a better communicator in those categories. Communication is the cause. My qualifications are in me. It's not just a book that I've read or a book that I've written. While both of those exist, it is in me. I have to talk about my experiences in order to help you understand that I am qualified to talk about this topic. So, is it right or wrong to talk about yourself when you're talking about leadership? Well, if you're only focused on you and what you can get from it, you have a different problem, and it's not necessarily communication. But if somebody asks the question, what makes you qualified to talk about this subject, to lead in this area, to lead this cause? If the answer doesn't at least minimally derive from, I've experienced X, and that's how I know about X. I think it's a farmer's insurance that says, we've seen a thing or two, so we can cover a thing or two. Well, yeah. If you've been there, you get it. I was blind, now I see. The shortest qualification statement in the world, better than any resume. But it wasn't about the blind guy. Think about that for a minute. It was the guy who made him unblind. I was blind, now I see. That dude's got the goods. It's as simple as that. When you have a referral who is your social credit that looks back to what you've accomplished and said, this person helped me get forward. Well, that's the best expertise you can ask for. But when you are on the platform, unless you're going to quote other people who have said such things, the best information you can give is what you've learned. Not somebody else's stuff regurgitated, somebody else's stuff synthesized. I read it, I studied it, I applied it, this is what it did in my life. This is how I am different, here's what I learned as a result. These are the tools you can take forward. If you lead for a cause, your persona, your expertise, your experience are absolutely imperative. If you lead just because it's in the paycheck, it's the job that you do, it's the degree that you have, it's the skill set that you've mustered, I'm not slighting that. I'm just saying you should know the difference. You should know the difference between hubris and qualified experience. And if you can separate those two when you're telling a story, you will have significantly more impact. If you can't separate those two, hubris and qualified experience, when you're telling a story, give me a call. I'll be glad to help you do that. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.